Hey Jeff, can you make a GreyKnightsmon Deck Profile?
GreyKnightsmon? Isn't that just basically Blue Flare at home? Alright, Digi-Egg cards, playing 4 copies of Wanyamon just so that we can draw 1. We are trying to establish a Tamer as soon as possible in this particular deck, and being able to do that consistently and draw is always what we're trying to go for as well with the game plan. Now for the rookies, we are definitely still playing 4 copies of GreyKnightsmon right here. This one is just always great because on deletion lets you play a level 4 Blue Flare Digimon suspended for free, and then you can utilize its on-play effects to either further search, gain more value, play Tamers, and continue your combos for the early game setup, which is always fantastic. And then for the other GreyKnightsmon, there's definitely 4 copies from the EX4 one. Not only now you can just on-play and draw one when you do anything related to Blue Flare, but when you do on-play a Twilight Digimon that is related to DarkKnightmon and all that stuff, you get to grab a Digimon with Digicross requirements from your trash back to your hand, utilizing the second part of the effect, which is really, really nice. And guys, I promise you, this is not a Blue Flare deck. This is a Blue Flare deck in disguise because we do have GreyKnightsmon for sure. Level 4s, 3 copies of the Blue Flare Greymon, just a really incredible good card because on play it searches you top 4, grabbing you 2 pieces potentially that's Blue Flare related, and that's really what it's all about. And if you have a Kira hand play, you can actually grab yourself a Metal Greymon from your trash back to your hand instead, which is kind of nice to have, but usually we only use that first part of the effect. And then it's inheritable, letting you sort of unsuspend when you're attacking, as long as your opponent has 2 or more Digimon board, is always, again, great Blue Flare effects and synergy. Now, because this is more Twilight and GreyKnightsmon, we're going to be playing 3 copies of the other EX4 Greymon Blue as well specifically. Not only this card can help you search for Kiriha, it can also help you grab GreyKnightsmon on anything that's Digicross requirement related, which is a little more relevant for this particular build. It has that save as well. When attacking, you can also draw 1 with its inheritable. So yeah, definitely nice to have there for sure too. And then we have 2 copies of the BT13 Male Bergermon, just really good to help you play Kiriha for free if you don't have one. Otherwise, you get to grab a Metal Greymon back from trash. And then its inheritable is that it can stun your opponent's Digimon when you're attacking, as long as your opponent has 2 or more Digimon on the board with no Digivolution requirements whatsoever. So again, really good Male Bergermon there. And with the newer one too from EX4, this one is a jamming one, and then the on play is kind of like a mini ice wall to synergize overall. Now with BT14 coming up real soon, I just can't wait to make all these other new deck profiles coming up featuring all those new cards. So if you guys are just as excited, be sure to subscribe, turn on the notification bell to stay tuned. Also give this video a like, and if you want to see early deck lists and first draft updates for BT14 decks, definitely join the AVAULT club as I'll be posting them real soon, or if not, they're already there. Moving into our Twilight package of level 4s, 3 copies of Deadly Axemon on play, trash 1 Blue Flare or Twilight card in your hand, draw 2 is always fantastic. It has the on deletion, letting you sort of search as well, revealing the top card of your deck. If it's a Blue Flare or Twilight, you get to add it to your hand, otherwise you trash the rest. Inheritable gives this Digimon extra 1000 DP all turns. Very, very simple. Draw power is also really important for this deck too. And then 3 copies of Knightmon right here on play. If you don't have a Nene in play, you get to play 1 Nene for free. Otherwise, it's on deletion as well, is exactly the same as Deadly Axemon. Reveal the top card of your deck. If it's a Blue Flare or Twilight card, you get to add it to your hand. Otherwise, you trash the rest. And then its inheritable is Reboot, which is going to be pretty neat when you can go for aggressive play, swing, and then unsuspend during your opponent's turn too. And then we have Knightmon Mighty Axe mode right here. It's just a very versatile card because it can be treated as both a Knightmon or a Deadly Axemon itself. So really good for Digicross requirements. It is on play. It can help you search as well, pop smaller things, especially when it comes to floodgates as well. And yeah, just a really, really nice 2 of which I'd like to include for this particular build. Moving into our level 5s, we actually need to play 4 copies of the EX4 Metal Greymon. It's very similar to the old one. It has that on rush, but it does require you to specifically use blue Greymons, which we don't play any red Greymons in this particular build because after all, it is GreyKnightsmon. And speaking of GreyKnightsmon, is more importantly because you can Digicross it into GreyKnightsmon and give it the inheritable of when attacking. If this Digimon is GreyKnightsmon, one of your opponent's Digimon with 3 or fewer Digivolution cards can attack until the opponent's turn, so you can stun it for a little bit. Again, being able to choose and strip your sources when you Digicross into this guy is always fantastic there too. Then we got 2 copies of the older Metal Greymon. The reason why we come down to fewer copies to this one in this particular build is because it's provided the inheritable for GreyKnightsmon. But if you guys, you can add up 1 and switch up the ratios a little bit in case if you do want to go for that Blue Flare strategy, which is always great so you can swing and also stun at the same time, which is why this card is always just really powerful. regardless. Then we got 3 copies of DarkKnightmon. I particularly like this one a little bit more from BT10 just because it has that on play, Digivolve 1, and then pop something your opponent has that's 5 play cost or less, and it can help you float on the board a little bit by letting you play one of your Deadly Axe Mons or Skull Knight Mons when it's about to delete it and then return the other one back to the hand. Doesn't provide any inheritable, that's totally fine. Just a really good control card to always have for sure. And that is why we also then play 2 copies of this DarkKnightmon from EX4, because mainly it helps us to Digicross again to GreyKnightsmon to provide the inheritable of opponent's turn once returned when opponent's Digimon attacks. If this Digimon is GreyKnightsmon, you get to switch the attack target to give you a little bit of defensive strategy, which is really great. Otherwise, you on play, you get to give one of your Digimon blocker, and also if it's Digicross, you also get to Digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon as well. And then on deletion, reveal the top 2 cards of your deck, adding yourself a Blue Flare or Twilight card among them, and then trashing the other one. It's just also really nice, but not as great as the BT10 one in my opinion. Then for level 6 boss Digimon of the deck, GreyKnightsmon is here. Playing 3 copies, we don't really need to maximize it as much because we don't really always need to go into it, but we're seeing it enough so that we can get into it when we really need to. This card does a whole bunch of things. You mainly do want to Digicross this card by hard playing it by combining your DarkKnightmon and your blue metal Greymon as well. So it reduces the cost by 4 in total, making it an 8 cost Digimon. But with that large amount of memory cost, it does come with a pack of a bunch of effects, which is really nice because on play, it Digivolves 1 across your opponent's entire board. Then all of your opponent's Digimon that are level 4 or lower can't attack until the end of opponent's turn. And that is a blanket effect, which is really good. And it also has that all turns when this Digimon would be deleted or returned to the hand or deck, you get to play 1 Metal Greymon and 1 DarkKnightmon from its Digivolution sources for free, so you can float back up, and you can also utilize their on-play effects as well to synergize, which is really good. And not to mention, with the inheritables that they had initially, you can redirect attacks, stun, and have a whole lot of board control presence, which is really nice when you get into this card, especially in some specific scenarios and situations, making it incredibly powerful. Tamers, definitely 4 copies of both Kiriha and Nene. Just being able to be treated as a Kiriha or Nene has a lot of synergy, as you can always play them for free very consistently, which is great. Gaining your memory at the start of main phase as long as there's 2 or more bodies on the board. And most importantly, when you Digicross, you can use 1 from Tamer and 1 from Trash's sources. So you're really utilizing both realms of the Trash and your hand and even your Tamers, so they can Digicross very effectively and efficiently with their effects is always really, really good. And then of course, because we're playing sort of like a Blue Flare based package of this deck, it makes sense to have 2 regular Kirihas just because it's your memory Tamer. Having memory Tamer is pretty nice. And then also when you would Digicross, you can always use Tamers from underneath. So if you ever go for that traditional Blue Flare strategy to swing aggressively, you can utilize this a little bit more. And because this is all about Blue Flare and we're playing more of a heavy Blue Flare base, I just thought it makes a whole lot of sense to actually be playing 4 Blazing Memory Boosts after all. Even though you have half your deck being Twilight, still being able to search for your Blue Flare pieces specifically is just super good and super crucial because it also lets you play your Kirihas for free, especially in the early stages of the game. You can always resolve back into that traditional playstyle of Blue Flare and then really go really aggressive, gain that ton of memory back, and it's really, really important because you do need a lot of memory if you ever want to Digicross in GreyKnightsmon, because you have to pay a lot of memory and you don't want to end up giving your opponent a lot of memory, or you might want to potentially have yourself retain your turn afterwards too, if you ever want to do so. So again, a really, really good option card, which I definitely would play 4 copies of because of the Blue Flare base. Other tech choices. We have Missimon as the other Digi-Egg, which is kind of more dedicated for this entire archetype, but like I mentioned, we play Wanyamon, so if you want to play a 5th one, this is also a decent one to add if you ever go through it. Otherwise, you can also play this one as your main egg instead too. Totally up to you with your choice. Very interestingly, because this does play DarkKnightmon, you can actually include DarkKnightmon X Antibody to do a whole lot of traditional DarkKnightmon combos, delete your own Tamers to unsuspend, grab stuff back instead of recycle. Pretty good alternative boss Digimon that you can get into other than GreyKnightsmon itself, so pretty neat. And because if you are playing sort of like the DarkKnightmon package, you can always still include the Nene. Giving your DarkKnightmon's blocker and also on play to search is also kind of nice, but generally I prefer the memory Tamer with Kiriha, which is why I resulted with that instead. But this one's pretty good too, for sure. And then for removal, Full Moon Meteor Impact. If you need anything hard removal to get rid of your opponent's Digimon instantly, I think this is one of the best removal options currently in the game because you can gain memory back for its potential reduction cost kind of thing. And then last but not least, Ice Wall, just for a very standard blue staple that you always want to include. So yeah, these are just some of those choices and options you guys can consider when adding into this deck. All right, combos for GreyKnightsmon. The deck is fairly simple and very similar to Blue Flare. Really, you're trying to look for cards that help you search and draw, and that's really what you're trying to go for because you need to find pieces. Setting up Blazing Memory Boost is always great that you want to see. This Gaussmon is good because you get to draw, and the longer term value when it sticks on the board, the more things you play, you get to draw more as well. This BT10 Gaussmon works great with the Greymon, play stuff that's level 4, so early chipping damage and stuff like that. And the Skull Knight and Deadly Axe. Skull Knight to play your Tamers for free, Deadly Axe to trash one and draw 2, and of course you do want to see your Tamers, ideally through Blazing Memory Boost and Skullknightsmon right here. So of course you hatch your egg, Digi-Evolve into whichever Gaussmon you have. Of course the traditional one would actually be going into the BT10 one, so that you can move up early, swing. If you have a Tamer, then you get to draw a card. If you don't, that's totally fine. So then when it gets deleted, you get to play this to search and find more pieces. Go for Blazing Memory Boost, try to cycle through as many cards, grab your Blue Flare stuff, so then you can potentially play your Kiriha Nenes for free, just like that. And yeah, that's really simple. And then you would just chip away until you find your top end pieces, which will be your DarkKnightmon and your Metal Greymons here. Depending on which one you have and depending on the situation, usually I like to keep the Metal Greymon and DarkKnightmon from EX4 so that we can potentially cross into GreyKnightsmon later on. If not, we're going through the traditional strategies of DarkKnightmon and Metal Greymon. We can use this Metal Greymon to swing more aggressively by digi-crossing with Greymon, as well as any form of male Birdramon you have. The jamming one would be the more ideal, so that you can potentially swing twice if your opponent has double Digimon on the board, stun their board. If your opponent ever plays Floodgates, which is like Blue Flare's biggest weakness, one thing I really like is that you can go into DarkKnightmon and you can, easily put Skullknightmon and Deadly Axemon underneath, and then you can de-Digivolve something and then pop it afterwards, which is always fantastic to get rid of those Floodgate rookies that prevent you from playing stuff that has cost reduction. Or even this Skullknightmon Mighty Axe mode, you can always Digi-Cross it as well with more materials, and going into that, you can also delete something that's play cost 4 or less. And eventually, if you really need to, go for the control later stage of the game to sort of seal the game. And sort of like once you chipped away your opponent's security, you go into GreyKnightsmon. You do pay a lot of memory, which is exactly why establishing your Kiriha Nenes, and your Blazing Memory Boost are really important, because you probably start your turn at 3, and then you might gain additional memory because there's 2 or more bodies on the board. You can even pop a Blazing, so you go all the way up to 6, paying that full 8 memory by Digi-Crossing the Metal Greymon and DarkKnightmon. So then you pass your opponent back to 2, or perfectly work your magic to pass them back to 3 if they have a memory tamer. So really important on how you sort of manipulate the memory gauge and sort of play around it this way. Very rarely your GreyKnightsmon is gonna come out and you can attack the same turn. It doesn't have rush and all that. So you're really playing it, and once you play it, it passes the turn. You control the board, de-Digivolve the entire board, and also stun everything that's level 4 or lower. And then also in the following turns, you can control, whenever you attack with your GreyKnightsmon afterwards, you just continue to chip away your opponent's security again and again. So then you can stun more things that's not level, but like with Digimon sources that are 3 or less. And then you also get to use your DarkKnightmon's Inheritable to always redirect attacks, so it's kind of like a blocker to give you a defensive stance if you ever need to. And if it will ever be threatened and sort of like kind of removed from the board, either by deleting, return to hand, return to deck, you get to play these 2 guys back out right here. Now the really neat thing is once you play these 2 guys back out, you get to de-Digivolve one of your opponent's Digimon still, and it also something that gains a blocker, so you can sort of like continue your defensive strategy, which is really nice. And because when you play them out, you can still continue to Digi-Cross with stuff if you ever want to. When you Digi-Cross here, you can really disrupt during your opponent's turn, which is what makes this deck really fun and really cool to play, even when those combos pop off just like that. Let's just say even the cooler thing is with GreyKnightsmon, if you had the other DarkKnightmon, which is this one instead, you can still Digi-Cross sort of and use this on-play effect to de-Digivolve and delete your opponent's Digimon afterwards too, which is technically kind of better than this one too. So really versatile, really fun deck overall to play. And yeah, really cool top end, which gives Blue Flare a whole new sort of strategy and really, really cool stuff that we have here. So if you guys want to see all these combos in action, make sure to check out this gameplay video right here if you haven't done so yet. As always, thank you guys so much for watching. You guys have a great day, great night, wherever you are. See you in the next video. And this is AVAULT signing